Hey butterflies, I hope you all have been doing well. I just wanted to bring it back to some basics today and explain alchemy in a more simplistic manner. I had an analogy that came to mind, so I just wanted to share it with you guys today. So, in essence, alchemy is transmuting lower vibrational energies into a higher vibration of love, of joy, and trust. And there's multiple ways to approach this by expressing yourself through any form of creation, learning the lesson so it's not repeated, right? And I've done videos on both alchemy and the importance of the sacral energy center, which I will link down below. But today I want to talk to you guys about transmuting your energy through one very simple act called crying, okay? And you would think that this is the easiest form, but for a lot of people it actually isn't, because it also means being vulnerable and addressing and sitting with our emotions. And sometimes it's easier to create or even spiritually bypass by accident because we're so focused on a bigger picture. And just because we can consciously understand a lesson, it doesn't always mean that it's been transmuted through our energy field. And personally, I think it's best to, at some point, do all three, meaning process our emotions, learn our lessons, and express it through some form of creation. So, of course, our body holds so much wisdom and it reacts both instinctively and intuitively. So, we're often told to listen to our bodies, and people generally apply that with food and rest, if that, but continue to suppress their emotions that cause tears. So, when it comes to crying, we'd rather suppress it because who wants to deal with puffy eyes and the headache of it all, right? No one wants to feel weak, okay? Emphasis on feeling weak, because it's actually a strength, because our body needs that release. You don't have to hold it in order to hold yourself together, because the mess part is part of that natural order, but we're just made to feel like it isn't. Like we're not strong enough if we can't just push that shit to the back, okay? So our tears are nourishment to our growth when we learn from those experiences, but when we're unable to, then it becomes the tears of tsunami that drowns us, right? And the visual I have for this is the water cycle. Just like how we reflect the cycles of the moon in its continuous phase of action and rest, the water cycle sort of reflects our own cycles of emotions, okay? So this is the analogy that I wanted to convey to you guys today. So technically this is a part of the reflective moon cycle already, but I'm emphasizing a very specific element, the element of water, and it's automatically connected to the sacral energy center, which is the element of water and governs our emotionality and creation. So that's why it's such a powerful act, because it's an act of transmutation, okay? That's why in Harry Potter, the tears were like an ingredient to heal. And this is a simple concept, but it's easily complicated because we can have such a hard time just sitting with our emotions and accepting them fully at that as they are, and simultaneously releasing it in that process. So it's inevitable that no matter how long the sun shines on us, there will eventually be rain, snow, or hail. Rain is like the tears of sadness. The snow is like the coldness and numbness we can feel. And hail is like anger. But we usually forget that there are happy tears as well, sunny showers, if you will. And whichever form of tears need to be expressed in that cycle is what needs to be expressed. So I think you guys get the point that it's vital for us to release tears of sorrow, tears of joy, tears of grief, tears of anger, whenever our body is called to do so. So let's just look at the water cycle for a second. There's precipitation, there's a resting period of the collection of water, then it evaporates, and inevitably there's condensation for the next cycle of precipitation, right? So what happens when we keep all that condensation built up in our energy, in our clouds? Sounds pretty heavy, right? An entire necessary weight just being dragged along. And this is when it's constant heaviness to the point where it never feels like the sun is even going to ever shine again, or even when it does, it's just there to scorch you. And if you want to say, well, Ruby, I never feel like crying, I'd say, well, we can still survive in the scorched drought, but why block off an entire spectrum of life, an entire ecosystem, just because you don't want to allow the Nile to flood? The Nile needs to flood for it to provide life to the desert lands. So if you've intentionally or unintentionally built a blockage in your river, then I'd suggest unblock that river, if you care to do so. And if you've been standing in the heat, find some shade. And what I mean by that is, go to your shadows, maybe tune in with your heart space more, maybe listen to your intuitive wisdom, be still, be silent. So let's say we're now able to express our emotions and the tears are flowing. Whether it's rain, snow, or hail, it all ends up in one pool, right? And this collection stage before it evaporates into thin air, it is so very important because this is what deciphers if we are going to repeat the exact same cycle, okay? Because these cycles of emotions repeating are inevitable, but we don't want to experience the exact same lessons behind that cycle over and over again, okay? And I'm not going to act like one good cry is going to magically heal a big ass wound, right? We often take multiple cycles to finally be able to release our wounds back into that pool because a lot of those times those cycles within us are on autopilot and just evaporating back into our cloud for condensation. So this stage of collection is for awareness and observation. It starts in that pool because that's the aftermath. So we're sitting in our emotions and observing how we reacted and why. And it doesn't have to be this big event. It happens, it's a thought process, and then you can hopefully move forward. And if you're unable to, then it's going to repeat in the next cycle, and that's okay too. Sometimes that's just how it is, okay? So as we practice doing this more and more, we can eventually be aware during the stage of precipitation, so it doesn't always have to be such a heavy outpour. And let me also add in that you have to have self-compassion during this process as much as it is about accountability. It's for our growth. Like I said, it gives life and it nourishes. But that's only possible if we nurture ourselves, okay? It's on us to allow it to be the water that nourishes us instead of the water that drowns us. I also want to be so very clear that this is not an overnight process. It varies for everyone, but please do not put pressure and a time frame and a time limit on when you should be over something. It's never a matter of forcing because what we resist persists. But no matter who we are, we all have setbacks and we all have our own cycles to deal with. Just make sure that you observe yourself with compassion, okay? And honestly, if you're not ready to do that, I wouldn't even do it. Personally, I would step back and work on forgiving myself and obtaining the ability to have self-compassion because that is a major component in all of this, which sounds simple enough, but we are usually our own worst critics. Let me also add in a reminder that acceptance doesn't always mean finding answers. Definitely set intentions to have clarity on anything you'd like answers to, and I do believe that it will come to you, it will reveal itself to you eventually. But when we dwell on questions, then that can sometimes keep us from just accepting things for what it is and moving forward. Sometimes we just have to accept a paradox instead of going back and forth and battling a duality within our mind and trying to choose sides. So the goal is to fully release those tears back into the pool, let's say into the infinite ocean, meaning accept whatever it was about, learn from it, and release it. And I understand we can't help but dwell on things sometimes, a lot of times we overthink, but the genuine acceptance of anything in the present moment can cause such a massive shift in our energy field and the energy that we're sitting in. Because if we don't, now we're going to recycle the same emotions, right? And things like that is what causes us to even have a heavy cloud that's causing a drought in the first place, because we become sick of or numb to experiencing the same damn cycles of emotions over and over again. It's draining to us, right? It gets to the point where the extra weight doesn't even feel like anything because you're just so used to it. It's just like, what weight? That's just, oh, that's still there? Like, I totally forgot about that. So I think that basically summed up my random message here. I hope the analogy didn't take away from the point. I just wanted to express the power of our tears, especially when we reflect on them with the intention to allow it to feed us instead of it feeding on us. But like I said, it's really up to us to do the work as well, to be bold enough to face our waters. And at the very least, we're releasing, okay? But to alchemize our tears specifically, that requires self-awareness, observation, accountability, self-compassion, and the ability to accept and release. So this is what transmutes the experience. This is the alchemizing process of our tears, especially so that it's not repeated in the next cycle. So I really hope that made sense. Thank you, butterflies, so much for spending your time with me today. Stay flying free, and I'll see you next time. Bye.